And so moving to West Texas really made me think about what was important in my work and think about the materials and the processes that I was using. And that's when I had this kind of serendipitous moment of, well, I wonder if I could inflate steel like I could inflate a balloon. I went to school with another Brit at Syracuse who did make large rubber inflatables, and they were very fun and tactile. And as a sculptor, I like that visceral connection to materials and installations and objects. So it was just, well, I use a hammer as a force to change this very plastic material at times called steel. And it was just a moment of, hey, I wonder if I could blow up a steel pattern like I can a balloon. And so this process has evolved from that. And then all of a sudden, having a different sense of empathy for the object that I'm making and looking at the object, you know, as a sculptor and as a faculty member that teaches sculpture. And contemporary art seems to remind us that the object has no value and place in contemporary art anymore, and I would wholeheartedly disagree with that. It becomes a time where the pieces can be quite fun and loud, and they can be quiet and introspective without having to have audio or moving image or a large installation. And I think these thoughts are coming from the place where I live. So you're very aware of clouds and that sense of atmosphere. And so, yeah, I started out making these former pillows clustered together like you see in a sense of cloud, and then graphically making a cloud. Like the iCloud icon is what created the big cloud and the smaller clouds, and just playing with that idea. Through the process, things sometimes don't work out the way they expect them to, and they pop, rupture, and burst. And
I like your pieces the best where they're not predictable, where they rupture. And
yes, me too. There's so sophistication and beauty in that moment. It's a moment where, you know, if a balloon popped, you would never be able to physically capture the object of the balloon popping unless you cast it and manipulated it, and that's a bit too contrived in my mind. So these pieces speak to the honesty of the moment. Again, there's an empathy to that moment and to the material, and I'm responding to that more and more and more the more I let it happen and the more I push myself to make it happen. And so that's where American Beauty right behind you came from, and was a nod to the movie American Beauty and that montage of the plastic bag in the wind and the beautiful moment of that monument that it has become in pop culture. And, you know, living in the wind of West Texas, we have plenty of bags that move around, and I take rides through the city dump, and there's just something beautiful about all the detritus and rubbish of life. And so it's not that I'm consciously trying to make that or recreate it, but it's just allowing those experiences to kind of move through me. And the hard work I do in the studio, you know, I'm an artist that ideas don't come easily. I got to plow those creative fields a lot, and so studio practice and the discipline of being in the studio was to me much like racing a bicycle. If you're not out there training and practicing and doing it and working hard and finding integrity within that, then the creative process stops for me. Well, again, that's one of the reasons why I'm still engaged in, you know, inflating this material, because I do enjoy that control. I know I can weld really well, I know I can be precise when I want to be, but when I inflate the work, I have to stand back and let chance have its moment, and you know, I enjoy that. I think.
Do you ever like inflate it and go, oh, what the hell? I'm just going.
Yes. Well, within Sunburst here, 2 of these were originally for these pillow forms, and they burst on me, and so it's like, well, what am I going to do with that? And then it's just looking at them in the studio, having a quiet moment with them and realizing this is kind of fun actually. I like the ripples on the interior reminded me of flesh wrinkling, and the pucker of the lips. It's like there's something to chase here. So the rest of the forms would fabricate them, get them into the kiln, and then just full gas on the compressed air. And it's that anxiety of when is it going to pop? And it always catches you off guard. And there's a performance element that I really enjoy about that.
Oh man, that sounds like a total slow-mo movement. I mean, you should get a slow-mo camera and just film it and see it happen. Now, one other thing I want to touch on, which I've touched on before in my own work, is storage.
Storage, oh.
If you're a sculptor, that needs a tremendous amount of storage.
Yes, it does. And so I have a big 3,500 square foot studio space that is, half of it is subletted from a former student, and the other half is just filled with shelving units where I store my sculpture. And it's a very dirty, nasty place. It collects dust like you wouldn't believe, but it's essential to my practice to be able to have that space to store it. And also an area where if I do larger installation works, I've got a space where I can set up and think about what might happen and the actions that need to continue to make it happen. So it is very important. And as we were talking earlier, as an educator and a teacher, that academia really doesn't get into that. You know, we make this work, regardless of what it is, whether, you know, they are objects or parts for installations. You know, if you don't have the privilege of selling them or being collected, then what do you do with them? You know, what kind of space are you needing to, you know, continue on within your practice?
Yeah, with me in my own work, when I hit my 60s, it's changed. There's no more monumental work. I don't have a place for it.
Yeah.
And so it's gotten smaller and more jewel-like, but in your artwork, it's going to be big no matter what, you know?
Well, I'm trying to make things smaller.
Even your smallest piece
is like this, yeah. So if you make 10,000 of those, it still requires a lot of space to store it. So I'm just, you know, I turned 49 next month. So I'm getting older, my body's getting a little more tired, and the larger pieces, like even these small 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet cubes that cluster together as a series of 8 to form the one larger object. I'm really interested in that clustering and working together, just as the clusters are here and the X's together in saddle. But so to make these large scale works that overpower the human, you know, emotion and experience, which I'm always interested in, it's like, well, I've got to have 100 of these smaller bits and pieces. It still requires the same amount of space as if you made one massive piece. So I don't know if I'm ever going to solve that problem.
Well, I'm solving it the same way you are. Go modular, and you can. It's easier to store smaller pieces that fit together to one giant one than it is to store one giant one. Yeah. So
that's been bred into me through my faculty, especially at Syracuse, that we had these great big studios for a graduate studio, individual studios, but they had standard size 36 by 72 doorways. Because my faculty used to show in New York, in Midtown, at a gallery, and they would have to take out the second story window, stop traffic, and move his big bronze sculptures in. And that was Roger Mack. And he just got so tired of it that his work really did shrink down, but he saw value in the fact that, okay, the grads can make these big pieces, but then they're confronted with the creative problem solving of how do you get it through a small doorway? Because not every gallery has a double door like this, or they might not have a loading bay, so you might have to walk your piece up a narrow stairwell up 3 or 4 flights through a normal sized door. How do you solve that problem? And so the idea of modularity and breaking things down in smart ways and engineering things to fit together so you don't reveal that, or you have the opportunity to reveal, became just a part of my normal artistic practice. So I like that. I like solving those problems.
I think as a printmaker, originally, that's how I started out. We had, our limitations were the stone size,
Yeah.
the acid tray. How big was that? So there was that practical side, and it's an area people don't talk about, that artists, you know, you're free to do anything. No, you are really limited by things that you didn't know would limit you. Like the size of the door, the size of the wall in the gallery, you know.
Yeah. Does the wall have a support behind it, or is it just sheetrock?
Yeah, yeah.
Gravity. You know, there's certain things as a sculptor I just can't work against. Gravity's one of them. You know, physics cannot be denied. It's a wonderful thing. So
I know, I did a piece once, a drawing, and it had video in it, cantilevered out of the wall, and just the framing cost to make sure that it would do what I wanted it to do was like...
Well, we have to think about safety too. We don't want people being, you know, mutilated or, you know, squashed by our work.
I know.
Even though they say all publicity is good publicity, I'm not sure my morality could stand that if somebody was hurt or injured through one of my sculptures. But I do like playing with that, you know, cantilevering work out into space so it looks and takes on those properties of being more buoyant, because then it feeds back into the work.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, I like people to physically engage, you know, by touching, not mauling, but, you know, having a tactile response to the work. So, you know, I think the burst pieces begin to reveal themselves a little differently than the solid pieces. And people still, even though they know my work, it's just a vinyl inflated object, or it's rubber. It's a soft thing I'm looking at.
Yeah.
But it's only when you touch that it reveals its hardness, and it isn't what you perceive it as being. And that catalyzing moment of tactility is super important to me. I mean, that's why I'm a sculptor. I like the tactility of materials and building and making and being physical. So yeah. Hey, well, that's what we hope to find out.
I know. We find the medium that best suits our personality and what we want to say.
Exactly.
So, well, thank you, William.
Oh, you're very welcome.
It was great.
I hope so.
And great success tonight at the opening. So I'll see you then.
Wonderful. Thanks very much.